So, today continue our discussion about the rural markets, and let's talk about distinctive features of the rural markets. How rural markets are different from the other markets or from the urban markets, or what makes rural markets a different ball game altogether than urban markets. So let us talk about these features which are unique in rural markets and which require a marketer to change his strategies while trying to expand to rural markets. So let us talk about the first such feature, and this feature is that there is a lot of diversity of religion, beliefs, customs and languages in the rural markets. In India there are almost 6 lakh villages, and there is a lot of diversity in these villages. People follow different faiths, they have different religious beliefs, they have different customs and practices, and the languages are also very different. If you go to villages in north, you would find that the staple food would be wheat, but if you go to south, you would find that the staple food would be rice. Likewise, the traditions are also different. So there is a significant amount of diversity in the rural markets. So you cannot consider all the rural areas to be one single market. Rather, they are all disjointed markets with each of them having different religion or beliefs, customs and languages. And that is what has to be taken into account while catering to rural markets. Now, one more distinctive feature of rural markets which differentiates it from the urban markets is that the family size is generally larger in rural markets. In rural areas, you would not find nuclear families in that many number. You would find that most of the families are still joint families with 3 or more than 3 generations living together. So this is something that is unique with the rural markets, and this is different from the urban markets. If you go to urban market, generally the family would be the nuclear families. Families would most likely be nuclear families, only with 2 generations living together. In any case, the family size would be lot less in the urban markets, while in rural markets the family size may be lot more. There may be more number of members on an average. If we start comparing rural markets with urban markets, there may be more number of members in the families in the rural markets. So now this is again a very distinctive feature, and this assumes importance as to what kind of product should you bring to the rural market. For example, I know of a company which launched TV with a bigger screen specifically for the rural markets, because in rural families generally the number of members are more, and naturally you want a bigger screen so that everybody can enjoy the same quality of audio and visuals. So these are the slight modifications that you'll have to bring as a marketer into your product when you are catering to rural markets, because they are different from the urban markets. Now, one more feature which is very different in rural markets is the pattern of demand, and I have discussed this in the earlier video sessions also, that while for the urban markets the customers demand product throughout the year, most of the products would be demanded throughout the year, while in the case of rural markets you would find that the demand is of seasonal nature. Whenever the crops are harvested and the crops are then sold in the market, then only the farmers receive some cash, and this generally happens in the month of March, April, and then maybe around June, and then maybe around September, October. Most of the people in the rural markets, they are from the farming community, and that is why generally they only have sufficient money available with them at the end of the cropping season when they have already sold their crop in the market. So their demand would also peak during this particular period, that is somewhere around March, April when they have sold the Rabi crop, then somewhere around the month of June when they have sold the Zaid, and then somewhere around September, October when they are selling the Kharif crop. Now if you go to a bank in your vicinity, you will find that generally they have come up with different kind of products for the farming community or for those who are living in the rural markets, those who are living in the rural areas. For example, one such product, some kind of a credit card it is, this product is called the Kisan Credit Card, KCC, and in Kisan Credit Card the unique feature is that the money does not have to be returned on a monthly basis. The interest has to be paid not on a monthly basis but to be paid on a semi-annual basis, that is somewhere around September, October and March, April. And the reason is because this is the time when the farmer would have sold his crops in the market and he would have earned some cash with which he can repay the loan taken from the bank. So this is one important feature which you need to keep in your mind whenever you are bringing products to the rural markets. The nature of demand is seasonal. Then again, you know already that as far as the income levels are concerned, yes, in rural areas people generally they earn less than what their counterparts earn in the urban areas, so the income levels are relatively lower. This means that the product that you are bringing to the rural market has to be different from the urban market. In urban markets you can bring products with a better aesthetic design. Apart from the functional aspect, the product should also look good because the urban customer may be ready to pay for it. While if you are going to a rural market, you only have to ensure that you are providing the customer with the functional aspect of the product. Even if you do not have the product in a very beautiful design, even then the rural customer might want to purchase it because the product would be relatively less costlier than the product that is getting sold in urban markets. So let's say if you are bringing if you are trying to sell furnitures to somebody in the rural market and then you are also trying to sell it to the urban market, while in the urban market you may also worry about the design aspect apart from the functional aspect, apart from the basic function that the furniture is performing. You have to worry about the design aspect. The furniture should look good also, but that is not the case with the rural markets, because if you start working on the looks of the product also, that will increase the cost of production of that particular item, and then naturally you will have to sell the product at a relatively higher price, which the rural customer may not be able to afford. And that is why when you go to rural markets, you basically go with the no frills kind of products. No frills means no add-on benefits. The product will only perform the basic function for which it is meant. This is okay. If you look at Maruti Omni is one four-wheeler which is basically meant for rural markets, and you would find that the design of the seat is such that it does not look very attractive, though it performs its functions. The passenger seats in the Maruti Omni, you would find that they do not look very attractive, but they do perform their function. That is what I mean by no frills product. On the other hand, a Maruti Alto will have a better looking seating, will have a better looking upholstery, will have a better looking design, because the urban customers are ready to pay for that design aspect also. So this is one thing that you have to keep in your mind, since the customers in the rural areas, they have lower income levels, so you have to somehow reduce the price of your product, and this you can do by doing away with the design part, just coming up with a product which performs the basic function, because that will help you reduce your cost of production and price your product at a lower point for your customers, which rural customers very much prefer. Now, another issue with the rural markets is that the customers generally purchase in small quantities. For example, whenever you have to purchase rice, you generally purchase a 10 kilogram sack of rice. If you are living with your family, the family would be purchasing maybe 10 kilogram sack of rice, or maybe at times at least 5 kilogram sack of rice you would certainly be purchasing. You might go beyond that, you might be purchasing 15 or 20 kilogram sack also, but that does not happen in the rural market. The reason is the customers in the rural areas, they do not have sufficient amount of money present at one particular point of time, so they are not able to buy in bulk. So what will they do? Instead of buying the rice in a 5 kilogram package, they would probably be buying it maybe 2 kilogram, but naturally they would be buying it more frequently. The reason is that they do not have a large amount of money available with them at one particular point of time, so they generally purchase in smaller quantities. So they may not be able to buy a 300 milliliter pack of shampoo. They would certainly then be buying 1 rupee or 3 rupee sachet, because they do not have the capacity to purchase in bulk. So they purchase in smaller quantities. So if you compare the purchase quantities of rural and urban markets, you would find that this is the difference. You would remember that Coca-Cola came up with one particular advertising campaign when they launched the smaller bottle, which was priced at somewhere around rupees 5, and the normal bottle was priced at somewhere around rupees 9 and 10. So they launched this particular rupees 5 bottle specifically for the rural markets, because they knew that the customer in the rural market, they generally don't have this much money that they can purchase in bulk. So they want to purchase, but they cannot purchase in bulk, and that is why Coca-Cola brought rupees 5 bottle. So that bottle had relatively lesser amount of the beverage, but then it was priced at just rupees 5. So this is the kind of innovation that you have to bring in whenever you are catering to rural markets, because they are distinct, they are different from the urban markets. Now another distinctive feature, and it is a very commonsensical kind of a thing, that as far as the urban markets are concerned, you would find that there is a demand for FMCG products also, there is a demand for consumer durables also. But in rural markets, apart from all these products, what else is demanded? What else is required by the customer? Agricultural inputs and agricultural implements. And you can add to it agricultural machinery. Now what do we mean by agricultural inputs? All those things which are used for purpose of cultivation. For example, seeds. For example, fertilizers, pesticides. They are all called agricultural inputs. On the other hand, agricultural implements, basically we are referring to those machinery items. For example, a thresher, maybe a tractor, maybe a tiller. So all these kind of equipments, they are clubbed under agricultural implements. For example, in many parts of Uttarakhand, you would find, if you start moving in the direction of Udham Singh Nagar, that people there, they use submersible pumps, because there is a lot of underground water present in the Tarai area of Uttarakhand. So they use submersible pump and pull out water from the ground, and then they irrigate their fields. For that you need to use pumps. These electric pumps are basically nothing but agricultural implements or equipments. So in rural areas you would also find this demand for agricultural inputs and agricultural implements, which is not the case with urban markets. So this is how rural markets are distinct from the urban markets. Another issue which makes the rural markets different from the urban markets is aspirational buying. While I'm saying this, I should declare that I am not saying that urban markets and urban customers don't go for aspirational buying, but as far as rural markets are concerned, nowadays we are seeing this particular trend in rural markets also, that there is a lot of aspirational buying. What happens is, many people from the rural areas, they migrate to cities, and whenever they are having their holidays, they come back to their ancestral village, And when the other people in the village, they see them, they tend to also start aspiring to buy the same kind of products that these people who are basically living in the city and they have just come for maybe a week or month, they are using. So the same kind of products they aspire to buy. They aspire to imitate their lifestyles. They aspire to use the same kind of products as these people. So this is what I mean by aspirational buying, and this many a times is seen in rural markets, specifically in those rural markets which are closer to towns and cities, and which see a lot of influx of people from the towns and cities to the village. So there the level of aspirational buying is much more. So this is one thing which makes the rural markets distinct from the urban markets. Again, one more thing is the reliance on traditional media like theatre and wall paintings. Theatre, Nukkad Natak, folk theatre, Lok Natak, folk dances, Lok Nritya, wall paintings. Now these are the media that the rural markets generally rely on more than in urban markets. In urban markets, you generally see that the media is very different. People rely on maybe the print media, the newspapers and magazines, and they consume the information through these kind of modern media. While as far as the rural markets are concerned, they still rely a lot on the traditional media like folk theatre, wall paintings. So as a marketer, you may want to advertise your product through wall paintings, or maybe by promoting your product in the middle of a folk dance or some other exhibition that is taking place in a village. That would probably be a better idea for you, because still there is a lot of reliance on these traditional media in the rural markets. Now one more issue which is very well known, in fact, is the poor quality of infrastructure in the rural markets. Now many a times there is not adequate transportation infrastructure. Roads are not motorable, and they're simply not navigable in the months of July, August, that is to say the rainy months. The storage infrastructure is not there, warehouses are not there, or maybe in a very bad shape. The cold storage infrastructures are not there. Then the communication network has also, at times you find that it has broken down, and many times the network connectivity is not there, the mobile phones are not working. So there are these kind of infrastructural bottlenecks also in the rural markets, which is not the case with the urban markets. This implies that when you are planning to cater to the rural markets, you may have to spend more than in catering to the urban market, simply because the infrastructure quality is poor. The roads are not there, the storage network is not there, the storage infrastructure is not there. So that will only increase your cost of operations. The communication infrastructure is poor, so naturally you cannot go for mobile advertisement, naturally, because the communication infrastructure is poor. So these are the constraints which are there, and if you want to circumvent them, you will have to pay more, you will have to spend more amount of money, and that will increase your cost of doing business. And that is why many a times many of the marketers simply don't explore the rural markets. They simply don't venture into the rural markets just because they feel that the costs are formidable. The costs are too much for them to actually go and think of entering the rural markets. However, as we have seen that yes, these constraints are there, and these are the aspects, these are the attributes which make the rural markets distinct from the urban markets, forcing the marketer to also change his strategy when he's expanding from an urban market to a rural market. But if somehow you are able to make a dent in the rural market, if somehow you are able to get a foothold in the rural market, it is going to be much easier for you to survive and prosper from and earn your revenue from the rural markets. The basic idea behind this particular discussion today was to let you understand why is rural market different from the urban market. How are the rural markets different from the urban markets? What is it that makes rural marketing a different ball game? And what are the implications for the marketers? So what are the implications for the marketers of these distinctive features of the rural markets? So you have to basically think of these distinctive features that make a rural market quite different from urban market, and then you have to think of the strategies accordingly, rather than simply using the same strategies which you have been using in the urban markets. So thank you very much.